This is the Accidental Safety Pro live at the 2019 National Safety Congress and Expo in sunny San Diego. My name is Jill James, Vivid's Chief Safety Officer, and today I'm joined by Jacy Good and Steve Johnson, road safety advocates and founders of Hang Up and Drive. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
So, Hang Up and Drive, how did that get its start? What does it mean?
That's you. Start us off.
When I was driving home from my college graduation with my parents 11 years ago, a driver talking on his cell phone, speakerphone. He thinks he's doing everything right. His hands are on the wheel. Gets to a red light and he stops. He was looking out the windshield, but then was so distracted by this cell phone conversation, he turned left through the red light. As a result, an 18-wheeler swerved trying to miss him and unfortunately hit my family's car. Both of my parents were killed on impact. I wasn't breathing. A coincidence of a paramedic living nearby, a hospital right down the road, keeping me alive and helping me to fight through months of surgeries and rehabilitation and getting my life back.
Thus, Hang Up and Drive.
So Hang Up and Drive.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the short version of how we got to found Hang Up and Drive is after the crash. I guess we should establish that we were a couple from the very beginning of freshman year of college. So this is now graduation day, and we have life planned.
Right.
As
so
a couple
not only are you
forward.
founders of this business, but you were a couple before what happened to your family, Jacy.
Yeah. So as she slowly healed over months and really years, but especially those first critical months, she just wanted to do something about distracted driving. This was the thing that caused this horrible
Tragedy.
event. Tragedy. I don't know the word to use sometimes, but and she tried to get laws passed in Pennsylvania where this happened, and that just got her name out there, and she kept fighting, and the big turning point was Jacy was wearing a sign on her back. You want to talk about that quick?
I was 21 years old and I walked with a cane and I had half my body not really working, and people would stare at me like in a really uncomfortable kind of way. People would stop me and say, "What happened to you?" or "What's wrong with you?" And I was always like, "Okay."
Humanity. So interesting.
So I couldn't keep it short. I had to tell them someone on a cell phone did this to me.
Yeah.
And I kind of got sick of answering the questions and thought it was just as easy to put it on my back.
So what did the sign on your back say?
My handicaps were caused by a driver on his cell phone. The other two people in the car were killed. Please hang up and drive.
So that got some local media attention around where we were then living with my parents, which happened about 6 months after she was out of the hospital. We moved because we kind of needed that support. So it got local New York media attention, and it built and built and built, and eventually she was on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And after that, we realized maybe giving speaking engagements, presentations, was a way we could really make change. Just change people's behaviors instead of changing the laws. And so that's when we thought of Hang Up and Drive, and that was 2010. And that ball has been rolling ever since.
And to be fair, we didn't really think of Hang Up and Drive. My dad had a bumper sticker that said Hang Up and Drive.
No way. Wow.
From before, everyone had a cell phone. My dad always taught me driving is dangerous. You got to pay attention.
Yeah.
Don't be on your phone. Back in the days when phones were nothing,
Right. Hang Up and Drive. So the inspiration came from your dad.
Yeah.
How wonderful is that? Huh. So, Jacy, when you're recovering, at what point did you get this drive? Was it like immediate? Like, I've got to be an advocate? Or what stirred in you to say, I really have to do this? And you and Steve came together and said, okay, we're going to make this happen.
I think the first inspiration was the fact that no one was punished. 2 people broke laws from running a red light and swerving to the wrong side of the road, as this tractor trailer did. but because there were no laws about cell phones and driving in Pennsylvania at the time, the district attorney determined that no one was responsible for killing my parents. And that kind of didn't add up to me.
Yeah.
And so I first started trying to get a law passed. That got my name out. And then it was your high school, right? It was the very first place we spoke. Just neighbors talking to neighbors got us into his high school. And it was really, it felt good. It was terrifying because public speaking is terrifying. It was a scary first endeavor, but we got through it and felt really, really good afterwards and knew we could put our lives into this.
Yeah, it was just us reading off of note cards, basically.
And the two of you did it together the first time at your high
right
school,
off the
Steve?
bat.
Yeah.
At that point, it was in part because I was still so injured physically and emotionally. I really was not able to talk about it on my own for the length of a high school class period. And beyond that, there were 3 months of my life that I couldn't remember in that hospital where Steve was there by my side and could
He was the memory.
fill in those memories.
Yeah. So you had said you were on your way to college graduation, right? Did you both graduate at the same time?
Same day.
Yep.
Same day. So what were your degrees?
My degree was in international studies and German studies. I had two majors. My job was with Habitat for Humanity. That I would live in New York City. I would learn how to build houses. I'd be part of kind of like the environmental, making sure there's nothing terrible in these houses that's going to harm the people moving into them or harm our environment in the process. It was through the organization AmeriCorps.
Yeah.
So I think, am I remembering right? I would earn $11,000 for the whole year of living in New York City, learning how to.
There was no housing stipend either. I think that was it.
So basically, you would have had to have 2 more jobs at least. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What about you, Steve? What was your?
I was about as far opposite as you can get. My 2 majors were business or international business and finance, and I had a job lined up for after graduation at a bank that was sort of near where I lived, so I could live with my parents in New York, save money. This bank was in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And that was sort of at least the plan, She was going to be in Brooklyn for at least a year, and I was an hour away or so, and we could see each other on the weekends, and, we certainly knew...
You would propose, right?
Well, there's rules. We certainly had talked about that stuff. There were no hard plans, but we certainly expected to stay a couple and to figure it out in the real world after, a college campus is very much a bubble.
Yep.
And we made it work there.
Yeah.
So we were ready for that. And then, it's part of why our story, her story, but I guess it's our story,
it's your,
is so awful is because this crash was on the way home from college graduation. That's one of the things that gets media attention, let's say. And it's true that that's horrible, but it also put us in a place where we just didn't start those jobs, you know? I could be in the hospital every single day for 4 months with her.
Right.
And we didn't have to, we just called these companies and said, I'm sorry, this happened. They obviously were okay that we were not going to be working for them. And it put us in a position where we could focus on different things that were more important.
Of course.
At that time.
Yes, of course. Wow, what a way to start graduation. I mean, just like the mechanics of it. You didn't really have that first job, so how did you have health insurance? Right? I mean, that's a thing.
Incredible story.
Right?
It was 2008, so my dad could not insure me unless I was a student. So my insurance ended graduation day.
Yeah.
My dad called me a month before graduation and said, it's a month before your job starts in July after you graduate. Yeah. Do you want me to buy you health insurance for that month just in case anything happens?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm healthy. I'll be fine.
You said what every college...
Don't worry about it.
Uh-huh.
Thank everything in the universe. My dad did not listen to me. My dad bought that health insurance and
the policy started the day of the crash.
Wow.
Saved us a lifetime of debt.
Right.
We were told that first hospital, she was in the hospital regular hospital for 2 months. One of those is ICU, and one of them was a regular care floor. We were told that would have been $2 million.
Yeah.
And then the rehab hospital for another 2 months would have been $1 million. So that's Jay Good looking down on us from heaven.
Wow. Wow.
And I was still on my parents' insurance. I forget. My mom had a company or a plan, whatever it was, that I was allowed to stay on.
Yeah.
And then when Obamacare finally happened, maybe that was 2010, a couple years after, her company could insure me until I was 30, and I'm only 33. So I was on my mom's insurance until I was 30, which was great.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. And
Right.
now, because we're self-employed, I'm on, what is it, the exchange, whatever you want to call it,
right.
NewYorkStateOfHealth.com that I go to, org. It's expensive.
Right. Yes,
I hate it.
Yes,
But it matters.
It does matter. I mean, and this is real life stuff, right? I mean, here you are about to set your life out. I mean, everyone who's graduating from college and is looking for, thinking about all those things, their biggest decision is, does the company have health insurance, and which plan should I take, and what's a premium, and figuring it out. And you're like, this is all dumped on you, a whole life restart, including all of those things. So as you've been doing this business together for now, how many years?
9.
I mean, we've been giving speeches since our first 6 speeches were in 2010.
Wow.
We maybe actually incorporated end of 2011, something like that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, have you used those college degrees? Have you delivered your, what you talk about in German?
Not yet.
Okay.
Have I used my college degree? I wouldn't say specifically, but because we went to a liberals arts college, I know so much of what I use in creating and presenting came from the classes and the skills I learned in classes that maybe aren't related to public speaking or driver safety.
Yeah. And did that finance degree come in handy as a founder of a business?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But I sort of would echo what she said. I feel the general growth of having gone through college and all that means is more what makes me the adult that I am now.
Yeah, you guys kind of had a fast on-ramp to adulting. Yeah. So with regard to being road safety advocates and some of the things that you're talking about now, I know you have some particular big points that you're trying to share with audiences when you're speaking with them now. And I know one of them has to do with cognitive demands on the brain. Can you speak more to what that is and what kind of message you want people to know about?
Yeah, I mean, anything that sounds like a distraction is a distraction. Distraction has existed since cars were invented. And all of a sudden we have more people dying on our roads than have died in the last many decades because why?
Yeah.
The thing that's changed is that we all have a computer in our pocket and we're being urged to use them because it's built into the car and we're told it's safe. But you look at the science, you look at what the National Safety Council has been collecting for decades. We know there's no improvement in our ability to drive safely if a phone's in our hand or it's coming through the speakers. Stick shift car isn't making us crash. One hand on the wheel is generally okay. But you talk about what goes on in our brains and we can't do it all.
It's one of the big things. Maybe the biggest, at least science part of what we're trying to get across to our audiences is that we've just kind of been misled to believe that Bluetooth is the solution. Factually, and they've looked at this a million times, there's so many studies we can point to, you're only 0.5% safer using Bluetooth versus holding the phone.
Wow.
So in either of those situations, a person is 4 times more likely to crash than if you were just paying attention and driving. That's the same as driving at the 0.08 blood alcohol content. So you see somebody talking on the phone, which we all see every time we're in the car, even if it's on Bluetooth, that person is essentially driving at the legally drunk limit. This is a pretty good buzzed driver.
Yeah.
And when you look around the world, there's a lot of countries that they've been on top of this, and the science has been there, as Jacy said, for a long time. I think maybe here it's just being suppressed. Maybe there's lobbyists involved. There's a lot of money. They're selling us Bluetooth devices.
So laws are different in different countries.
There are places we
Yeah,
meet
talk about that.
people.
So, like, within our country, it's state by state, and it really varies. There are still states in this country that have no regulation regarding cell phones and driving, which is terrifying. But you start to look around the country, or around the world. What do we know? We met a man from Singapore who was just talking about the enforcement that if you use your phone in any capacity, you will be ticketed, you will be fined.
And that includes Bluetooth. Like, it is illegal to use even Bluetooth in Singapore. And he said people obey that law because it's very strictly enforced.
What else? You're better at this part.
Well, I think Japan is another one. Portugal, we know, is one. And more countries are moving in that direction. I think maybe Sweden is moving that way too.
Oh, and the UK. The UK is falling apart with Brexit right now, but they're also moving to get a complete handheld and hands-free ban for all drivers. And
It's less politically toxic.
Because they're paying attention to
here.
they're listening to the science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are
Interesting.
some countries where they treat it like drunk driving. You could actually be arrested for using your phone behind the wheel.
Within our country, I want to say there's 35-ish states. There's a bunch of states that outlaw everything if you're under 18 or under 21 for young drivers, which is a step in the right direction. But it feels like if we're protecting our young people in that way, why doesn't that apply to me too?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Fascinating. Thanks for sharing that piece on the research. I think I bet people's eyes kind of open up to that when you give that statistic on what'd you say, 0.5%?
0.5%
Better?
is the only difference you're making by using Bluetooth. It's the one thing you can guarantee after every one of our corporate events, an adult is going to walk up to us and say, I had no idea, and you've changed my mind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of research with MRI scans looking at where the activity in our brain is happening. That, like, we need our brains to drive a car, whether we pay attention to that or not. Then you add in another task, talking about the idea of multitasking, which scientists say our brains can't do. When we do two things at once, our brain hops back and forth between those two things. Talking on the phone, trying to drive a car. It's almost 40% less activity in your brain associated with the road, so you basically become blind to things that are right in front of you.
Fascinating. So something else that it gets under, it sounds like your skin and under, many safety professionals' skin is we don't like to use the word accident. And many of us don't believe in accidents. This podcast is called The Accidental Safety Pro, which that accidental piece is intended to be a pun by way of how you found your way into this industry, which applies to you as well with an actual event that happened. But talk about why you don't like to use the word accident and what you're using in its place.
For me, what happened to me wasn't an accident. Someone made the choice to use his phone and drive, and that choice led to the death of two people. I didn't use my phone when I drove because my parents taught me not to. They taught me it was dangerous, and I think looking at the way we talk about it, if you call it an accident, all of a sudden no one's responsible. Again, there's no accountability. We're not responsible for our own actions. And so I think if we say we use crash most of the time in place of it, collision, wreck, even, I guess maybe if you talk to, like, in the safety industry, they say a wreck applies to a boat, I want to say, but I still...
Oh, right. Yeah, I think you're... Yeah, okay.
She used the word wreck in a presentation, and afterwards a real grammar stickler came up and said,
there's always,
wreck is really only for boats.
There's always one in, like, every, 5 audiences or something. We can track that,
But it's just not, it's not a whoopsie situation.
Yes, right.
Statistically, they say 94% of all crashes are caused by some form of human error. It's choices. It's choices to drive too fast or to drink or to use drugs or to use your phone, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We're responsible. Humans need to take. And, you hear it on the radio. You're listening to the traffic report, and there's an accident here, there's an accident there, and it just starts to feel like there's no blame to be put out in the world. And I just think it's unfair to do that. I think we need to use the word crash.
Yeah.
And I think you can read a little bit of the history and look back in automotive history, and cars were killing people, and people were scared of the automotive industry, and they didn't want cars. So the automotive industry said, oh, it's not a car crash, it's an accident. And all of a sudden, they're not responsible, we're not responsible. And so there was a whole movement by the industry to kind of change the way we talk about it.
Like back in the Wayback Machine?
Way back,
Interesting. That's fascinating. So it's a choice that people make, agreed completely, and there's a ripple effect with choices that people make. How do you share what that is? Because, audiences are listening, and, you, as you said, people say, what happened to you? What's wrong with you? Why are you like that? That's just this immediate thing, but there's so much more, as we're starting to hear from both of your stories together. Talk about how do you share this ripple effect?
Yeah, I mean,
and what that means.
The fact that we're up there together, that Steve is such a big part of this ripple, and his entire family, and people I had never even met up to that point who were so deeply impacted. But talking about it, I show a photo of my family together, and then think of all the people connected. Think of all the people who care about you, who might be impacted if something happened to you. And from my brother planning funerals, or my mom being the beloved 8th grade English teacher. Next day is Monday. Mrs. Good has 314-year-olds coming to the middle school. That face isn't there, and how many hundreds of her students and her fellow teachers who are her best friends have to go on and get through the rest of that school year, and how many lives are impacted by a tragedy like this.
It goes back to our very first presentation. We were trying to figure out, we were asked to speak at my high school, and we agreed, even though we were kind of terrified of it. And I guess we approached it as a college assignment, because that's all we knew. So we were like, what's our thesis? What's our real big idea? And we thought of the ripple effect, and we made a note card of all the people. We listed names, and then there's husbands and wives of those people, and then there's children, and then there was all the coworkers, and we had we were holding this list that we believed had over 1,000 names. We didn't have names because there's all these students of her mom, et cetera. But we figured it's at least 1,000 people impacted by this one crash on one day. But that's just one crash, right? And there's all these crashes every single day. So in the presentation, it's tough to use numbers on this issue because we know it's underreported. We don't have the real numbers of deaths for cell phone use. So we use a middle-ish number, which is 15 deaths a day. We know the injuries are around 1,100 people a day, and we talk about that a little bit. But then we like to bring it back around at the end of the presentation but that person has a loved one. And, we have these faces on the screen. We know some of these people. And, that girl's dad told her 1,000,000 times that we don't text and drive. But she was texting, and she went over the yellow line, and she got killed. And now there's a father who has to live forever thinking, maybe I could have done more. And we started thinking about that. And, so it's not 15 deaths and 1,100 injuries. It's 15 deaths, 1,100 injuries, and everybody who cares about those people. So if people don't change the way they drive, at some point we're all going to be impacted by something like this because of that ripple effect.
Yeah, I mean, and in your case, ripple effect can even be so much as, AmeriCorps and what you're going to do with Habitat for Humanity didn't get to experience your gift. And the job that you had agreed to do, same thing. I mean, it spread so far. So far.
And so my call to action is always, instead of starting one of these ripples of pain, being involved in that somehow, what if you did the opposite? What if when you sat down in the car, you're like, all right, I'm going to be nice today. I'm going to let people merge. I'm going to go the speed limit. I'm going to put my seatbelt on. I'm going to do all these things that we all know we should do.
But different ripple. Yeah.
And I got to say, we've spoken over 1,000 different places. We hear stories every single place we go because people are being impacted.
So you said thousands of places you've spoken, all over the world?
3 countries.
Just 3 countries. Wow.
Yeah,
so
what is it? I think our 40th state will be next month with our first Vermont
coming up on Vermont
speech.
for state number 40.
And then some Canada events and some European stuff, just in the Netherlands. Yeah.
So you talked about that first speaking event at your high school, and you approached it like, you had your thesis statement, and this is like an assignment we're going to go through. How did what you do together as a couple, presentation-wise, how did that evolve for you? Did you figure out and like practice something? Did you hone it? Like, what was that piece like for you?
I mean, I think it changes every single time we do it.
Really?
Just based on who the audience is.
Okay.
After that first speech, we got trained by the National Safety Council. We've done a whole lot of webinars and learned everything we can learn about this issue so that our data is always as up to date as it can possibly be.
Yeah.
And, speaking to a room full, all-girls high school is a little different than speaking to a room full of truck drivers for the local grocery store. And just figure out what to play on to get people's emotions really wrapped up in this to try and inspire a change.
We, we knew we wanted to do it together. Well, there was no choice. Really, she, not just physically, but her brain took a long time to get back to the person she is now, which is essentially the person she was before. But it took a really long time.
Yeah.
Short-term memory especially was bad back then. So we knew she couldn't do this all on her own.
Yeah.
So we broke it up. And back in the day, those early couple of years, I did a higher percentage of the speaking than she did, even though she's sort of the quote-unquote star of the show.
Yeah.
And then as she kind of came back and got more, not more confident, she was always confident, just got better.
Got my voice back.
Yeah. Then we shifted some of what I was talking about back to her. And, I'd say now the split is maybe 60-40, something like that in her favor. But as she said, we're always tweaking. We're always trying to be better.
Adding new research as new research comes out.
Yeah. And we now incorporate, Jacy was in an AT&T PSA that came out, now 3 August ago, 3 years ago.
2016.
Yeah, wow. And that went viral. That had over 300 million views on social media. So we didn't use it for the first 12 months plus probably, but now that's in every presentation, and we got immediate great feedback and regretted not having used it for the 12 months that we didn't use it. But whenever we find something that works, we stick with it.
Yeah.
Even just stupid jokes, we're always trying to keep it as light as we can because it's a very heavy subject.
Right. So I was wondering, to tell. So you're citing statistics, but you're telling such a personal story. How do you keep your energy? What do you do to get yourself ready to do that, to tell that personal story? How do you recover afterward? Yeah, like, what's that like for you both to do?
For me, it's always emotionally draining. It is difficult to tell. You're better at, I guess I've gotten better. It's kind of compartmentalizing. That you can say this is a story, and on one part of your brain it's about you, but on the other part you're teaching a lesson. And you can focus on that you're teaching a lesson. For me, the inspiration comes from the people that I get to talk to afterwards who say, this changed me. I shared this with my wife, with my daughter. And maybe the other part is that summers are really quiet for us, that we mostly speak in high schools at this point.
Okay.
And so over the summer, it is time in nature. It's being on a lake in New Hampshire, and stop checking the news feeds and don't read all the articles about cell phones, because you just got to be able to turn it off sometimes.
Ground yourself and recharge. Yeah.
It's funny.
And a lot of caffeine also helps.
I think there are days when it hits harder,
Yeah.
We find ourselves speaking on the anniversary of the crash a lot of the time because the crash was May 18th, and a lot of high schools want us before graduation or before prom, so we're speaking a lot on that day, or her parents' birthdays, just things like that. Where I'm looking at the photo on our PowerPoint, and I'm like, wow, like
that's today.
That's Jacy's car. Like, Jacy was in that car. She came out of that car. And then it hits a little harder. But we have done it over 1,000 times, and so there is a natural numbing, I guess, to it. But the focus on we can accomplish something important right now if we give this speech well is maybe the real key.
So what's it like being colleagues and life partners? And how does that work for you? I mean, it sounds like you probably spend a lot of time in lots of modes of transportation, small quarters, hotel rooms. Yeah, how's that work for your relationship?
We're lucky we get along.
You still like each other?
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the early days it was hard, and we'd find like, oh, we're bickering a lot. Oh,
Yeah.
we need a little time apart.
Yeah.
And so
How do you make space for that in your
You know
yeah.
what we do?
Yeah,
we
what-
get two beds in almost every hotel room we travel for.
Yeah.
You know? We sleep together at home like a normal married couple, whatever.
Yeah.
Is it normal? Do married couples sleep together? I
Well,
know they do, but like so many. don't.
Apparently, there's a high percentage that don't.
Yeah, right, because
Anyway.
there's the whole snoring thing.
I know. My dad was on the couch like my entire life because of his horrible snoring. We started getting separate beds, which it's nice. You just feel like even in a
Give your
hotel room that
space.
has not a suite, you just
Yeah.
have a room.
Yeah.
You just have your own little space.
Yeah.
And we are traveling a lot. You know, she
But
puts
we
up with
make
my
sure-
podcasts in the car.
We make sure when we're traveling for work, it's almost never only work. So you get a little bit of fun when you're in San Diego and you
Yeah.
can walk down the Balboa Park and
Yeah.
have fun together and not just be work colleagues.
Crushing it at work, yeah.
I think we try to think of every trip as a potential mini vacation.
Yeah.
We're here in San Diego now, and we've had some fun, and we will have a little bit left before we leave tomorrow.
Yeah.
Our next trip, our next flight trip at least, is later this month. We're going to be speaking in Knoxville, Tennessee, but her friend lives in Nashville, and so we're going to spend 3 extra nights with her friend, just a
Nice.
mini vacation there.
Take in some music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do that stuff literally every time we possibly can.
With purpose. I do that when I travel as well. I'm not just going to go back and forth from the work to the hotel to have a meal and back to the hotel again. I'm in a place, regardless of where it is. There's got to be something I've not seen before, something to experience, something to fill you up, or a place to recharge.
Yep.
Yeah.
This girl is good at TripAdvisor and things like that. She finds the best parks you've never heard of and cool stuff to do. And I'm always a little unwilling to do it, and I say yes because I have to.
And then you're happy you did.
And then I'm always happy
Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
So you're the itinerary planner as well, Jacy, and the fun finder. Yeah. So balance-wise, introvert, extrovert, are you both the same or one or the other?
I never know how to answer this question.
Yeah.
What am
I
I?
think we're both introverts.
Yeah. Socially, I am, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes an event like this where we're trying to schmooze with people, we just suck at it, to be honest. You know? We're just, it's not natural to make small talk.
When I sit down one-on-one with someone, I'm fine. But
Yeah.
when you're in a booth and trying to reach out to strangers, that's the scary part.
Right. My life partner is an introvert, and he is also has a very public job in pastoral work. And so I'm like, how do you get in front of these groups to do? He's like, introverts are actually really good at this because we have a job, we have a purpose. But we're going, and he says the same thing. You bring me to a cocktail party, and he's like, "Don't leave me alone." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, that's
like
exactly
you
us.
get in front of audiences all the time, and he goes, "Yeah, but that's my job. Like I know my job, I know my role. Like make small talk, and he, about comes unglued, makes him nervous." So it sounds
Yeah,
like
at a
you guys
cocktail
are
party,
into-
we're like, I'm like,
What?
Jace, pretend to have small talk with me so I don't feel so awkward.
You're both introverts. Yeah. So it's important that you find that way to recharge yourselves. Like you really need to do it to be quiet in your minds and and with your bodies to be able to recharge, to do it again and again.
I couldn't imagine when I step back to think about it.
Yeah.
We would have had quote unquote normal jobs and whatever that meant and a normal life, and maybe we'd have kids by now, and we don't know if we want to do that at all at this point. We're just not sure, but
Yeah.
she said it yesterday after we gave our speech here. I'm just so happy we have this life. It's horrible that we have to do this, that we have this story to tell.
Yeah.
But the fact that we get to do this with like the person we love the most in the world, and get to travel and meet new people and eat good food and have a great work-life balance.
Yeah.
If I could trade it, I would trade it. But the fact that I can't, I couldn't be happier with the situation that we have.
Yeah. So what's next for you guys? I mean, 1,000 in, Are there specific, do you have specific goals, or you talked about laws and changing, and you speak mostly in high schools? Are there different audiences, or are you letting life unfold as it unfolds?
Kind of letting life unfold.
Yeah.
For me, this problem has seemingly continued to get worse. Our phones are getting smarter and they can do more things than ever, and we keep doing all of those things while we're driving a car.
Yeah.
I want to see there's a big movement, the Vision Zero movement. I want there to be no more deaths because of these choices.
Yeah.
It's a big dream, but I like to think in my lifetime maybe I'll get to see it.
Yeah.
But other than that, let it unfold, right?
Yeah, life-wise. I mean, business-wise,
Yeah.
Next month, Vermont State 40 means we got 10 left. So that, I love trying to hit those stupid little landmarks or milestones.
I have the same thing with this podcast, by the way. I want all 50 states represented and the territories.
Yeah.
And I'm not there yet. And so you represent which state so I can put this on my map?
I'm sure you've done New York before.
Yes, a documentary filmmaker. Yes, but okay. So now I have 3 guests from New York. Okay.
We would definitely want to do more international work. We've
Yeah.
had such great experiences. I think we've done maybe 10 high schools in a conference in Canada, and a couple corporate things in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And it all went fantastically. And I think there's so much more opportunity for us out there. And then I want people to stop dying.
Yes. Yes.
I want to stop having people like her parents die, people like her injured, and people like me affected.
Yes.
And it's so frustrating when I think of how much of it is preventable and how much pain there is in the world.
Well, and how many of us know people? I mean, this isn't like, I've never talked to somebody this has happened to before. I think it's getting to such an epidemic that we all can we don't have to think too hard to think about someone we know. Like right now in my little community where I live, I know parents who lost their son to the same thing, and just were influential in changing the law in my home state of Minnesota. And so I think we all know someone. And so what's the holdup with taking an action, right? Yeah, when it impacts, the ripple effect is impacting all of us, yeah. So we're here at NSC, and you spoke yesterday? Yeah, so how is that? How was your message received?
We were happy. Any event where you don't know how many people are going to show up, that's sort of the biggest thing. We know what we're doing. We're giving the speech a million times, so it's not like we're nervous for the speech. We're always just nervous to see how many people show up. But we had well over 100 people.
And being at the National Safety Council, you have a pretty good idea. You're going to get people who you're preaching to the choir.
Right.
These people know a lot of what you're going to say, but that means you got to push that much harder. And this morning we met a man who's 65 years old. He says in 32 years of going to driver safety presentations, we were the first ones to make him cry.
Wow.
Which is not what I'm going for. Or maybe it is.
Maybe it is.
I don't know. But he was just saying how impactful it was for him, more so than anything else he's seen, and how such a big inspiration for us that, all right, we've got something special and we've got to keep sharing and keep working on this.
So many fathers came up to us, both yesterday after the speech and this morning at the booth, just to say, like, I can't wait to share this with my daughter or my granddaughter even.
Yeah.
And that's just, I don't know, it's a huge compliment.
Yeah.
And makes, not every day for us is great.
Right.
There are days where we're giving 10 speeches in a week and we're exhausted.
Wow.
But then you hear a message like that and it really recharges your batteries.
So what's the most common question that you get from an audience, and what's the most annoying question you get from an audience?
Well, as she said, so I think last year we did about 125 events. And I would say like 90 to 100 of those are high schools, and then the rest is corporate and some other stuff that we do. So we're mostly getting high school questions.
Yeah.
And they're fantastic. They're just...
Yeah, what, like...
A lot of them want to know more about our personal story. They'll want to know how I proposed, fun things like that.
Okay.
What else you got?
I mean, I think the most common one is if I've ever met the young man who was on his phone.
Yeah.
get that one a lot, which I have not. He's never taken responsibility for having done anything wrong, and he is dealing with his own personal ripple effect, I'm sure, and this impacts him.
Yeah, right.
But unfortunately, I don't know anything more about what his life is today.
Annoying question.
Annoying question.
Sometimes we just get like, hey, what's your favorite color?
Really?
Or you know what?
That's
You know what we
middle
get
school.
is, you know, the first picture of us in the presentation is from like 2004. It's like when we met, basically, shortly after we'd started dating. And I've got this like beautiful head of hair.
Long, beautiful hair.
And so,
Did you have the flow going on?
you know, I had the nice wavy, whatever.
Like long enough that he could touch it from.
Whoa.
Well, no, not in that photo
Not
at
yet,
least.
quite,
Some,
but later.
anyway, so some kid will raise his hand and be like, "Hey, what happened to your hair?" And I'll be like, "Screw you, kid. I can't. It's falling out. It's turning gray."
Oh my gosh, you guys are still really young. That's funny. Yeah, what other, well, okay, so annoying question, but other bizarro questions besides your hair. How did you propose? Favorite color?
Every once in a while, we get a question that we've never had before. I wish I could remember the last one. One happened at a high school at the end of this school year.
Okay.
And we were like, we've never gotten that question before. And I have no idea what it was. But that's always really exciting because we've now done, I don't know, 800 high schools, whatever it is, over the years. So to get something new is exciting.
A lot of times like, we'll get asked how tall we are.
Okay.
In part because I picked out my wedding dress on Say Yes to the Dress.
Okay.
And so we have a picture of that in there. And when you're trying your wedding dress on, they have you stand up on a little platform.
Yeah.
So it's a picture of me next to Randy and the consultants at this bridal shop.
But you can't see the platform.
You can't see the platform, and I'm 2
So you
feet
look
taller.
really tall.
You're like,
You know,
how
the way they
tall?
ask, it's like, how tall are you? Is the way they phrase the question.
Oh, that sounds like a fun
You know
part
what,
of
we
the
get
story.
because we get a lot of the same questions, we've got, I mean, they're kind of canned responses, but we've got some really solid jokes. And nothing is more gratifying than making a room full of like 17-year-olds actually genuinely laugh at something. I
So
feel
are
like
you
it's
gonna
hard
have
to do.
kids someday?
I still don't know if I want kids, but I enjoy making
I'm trying to get you to
17-year-olds
make
laugh.
it.
That's all I'm saying.
And I'm trying to get you to make your joke.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
She's feeding you a
You
line
know,
here.
because my pelvis was shattered, so I make sure the kids know. Like we had this plan, we were gonna have kids, and I don't know if physically my body will be able to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
still kind of the jury is out right now.
you know, say like, so, you know, we don't know if we want kids or not, but if we do, if it's a natural birth, great. If not, you know, a surrogate, adoption, garage sale, whatever. And it's a guaranteed laugh every single time. And so we've done it every time we're asked. Like when I hear the start of that question, which is usually, do you have kids? Because we don't make it clear in the presentation.
Yeah.
I get like a little excitement in the back of my brain. I'm like, yes, we get to answer this question now. That's a peek behind the curtain. As a public speaker.
Yeah, right. Have you had coaching by any public speaking coaches, or has this all been developed on your own?
It's all us.
Yeah.
People will give us advice when they do see us speak,
Yeah.
which
Do
we
you take
occasionally
any of it?
take.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know.
I mean,
I'm a little
everybody
defensive
has
about
a-
it, to be honest.
Sometimes people are scared to be, like, to give a critique. They don't want to.
yeah.
But I always appreciate when someone will tell us what they think could make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise we just have honed it.
Yeah.
Just repetition.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, fabulous. So, parting words, particularly for people who are listening to the podcast. We're followed by safety professionals from all over the United States. Do you have a call to action for safety professionals? You know, these are people who are working with employees, and of course, people who are listening are to be thinking about their kids, like you're getting so much. But it's more than just about teenagers. So what calls to action do you have for safety professionals? What can we do as a profession to lay our hands on this?
I think to me, it's what we all already know. There's nothing on a phone more important than a human life. And we all know that. We got to live that. We got to lead by example. We got to hold each other accountable to our actions and speak up when something is wrong and we know it's wrong.
And I think it's just about making it personal. You know, states can have laws, countries can have laws, companies can have policies. But if people don't really feel the reason why that's in place, they don't want to follow it. You know, we hear from a lot of like fleet managers that we have this policy, but our guys are kind of, you know, we're butting heads about it.
Yeah.
But if you can get that room full of people to care, to hear a story like Jacy's, maybe shed a tear, whatever
to
it is.
think about their
Yeah.
daughters.
Yeah, get these people to feel as if this could have happened to them and their families, then you can make an impact. Then you can actually change the way people drive. So that's just what we focus on. Yeah.
The power of story.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you both so much for doing this. Thank you for the work that you're doing in your life's work together. It's fabulous. Appreciate it. Oh, and we forgot to say, so if people want to follow you, learn more about these statistics, invite you to speak, where shall they find you?
Hangupanddrive.com is our website. I'm the only Jacy Good out there on social media. I'm pretty sure that's still true. So find me on social media and connect with me.
She is easy to find. Steve Johnson, hard to find.
Well, I mean,
a lot of Steve Johnsons in the
There's
world.
another one somewhere at this conference.
Yeah, that's right. I registered for the conference, you know, when you had to get your badge earlier.
Yeah.
And there was a second Steve Johnson. And I was
An
horrified.
imposter.
Another reason why it was necessary that you partnered with this woman for the name, in addition to everything else.
I needed something unique.
Yeah. Jacy Good, Steve Johnson, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you all for spending your time listening today, and more importantly, thank you for the work and contributions that you do making sure your workers, including your temporary workers, make it home safe every day. If you'd like to join the conversation about this episode or any of our previous episodes, follow our page and join the Accidental Safety Pro community group on Facebook. If you aren't subscribed to the podcast and want to hear past or future episodes, you can subscribe in iTunes, the Apple Podcast app, or any podcast player that you'd like. You can also find all of our episodes at vividlearningsystems.com/podcast. And we'd love it if you could leave us a rating and review us on iTunes. It helps share the story with more and more safety professionals. And you can share any episode with your friends. If you have a suggestion for a guest, including if it's you, you can please go ahead and contact me at social@vividlearningsystems.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.